Hartlett.
Thank you. It is a great privilege to be called to speak in this historic debate, and I will be voting Remain for one fundamental reason, and it is that I'm a father of 4 small children, and the last thing I want is for them to grow up in a country with less opportunity than I have had the great privilege to enjoy. And what an opportunity it is, Madam Deputy Speaker. If we vote to leave, this country will not go to the dogs. Rather, it will be a case of an opportunity cost, of an opportunity missed. Because alone in the world, we are the only major nation on earth that enjoys unfettered access to the European single market in a currency over which there is no existential doubt. Now, I was passionately opposed to membership of the ERM and of the euro, but in my view, to be a major nation in the EU, but outside the straitjacket of the Eurozone, is an incredible position to be in. And it has been strengthened greatly by the renegotiation of the Prime Minister. Some say it was not a fundamental renegotiation, but actually by securing this one key point, which is that the EU cannot discriminate against those countries that do not use the euro, it means that this platform of prosperity that we have is now secure. And in my view, by voting to Remain, we can build on that in 4 key strategic economic areas. First and foremost, we will restore our reputation as a safe haven and a sound and stable country in which to invest. The referendum in Scotland and this referendum put that at threat by threatening huge uncertainty. If we vote to Remain, whilst those 2 constitutional issues will not go away, in my view, to the people that matter, delighted to give way, Jonathan.
He brings up the independence referendum in Scotland, but at least he'll concede that the Scottish Government provided a 650-page white paper saying what they would do in the case of an independent Scotland. I've seen squat from the vote leave.
And none of the, I don't need to add very much to that. The point I am making is not in any way to incite the SNP. It's simply to say that we have, I believe we will have restored our reputation internationally for being a sound and stable nation by putting these 2 constitutional issues not to bed, but to the margins in the eyes of those investors and those who matter most. The second point is about the terms of trade. Last year, I was standing on Mark's Tay platform on the main line into Liverpool Street with a member of my Conservative Association, and a goods train came from the Felixstowe direction towards London, therefore obviously with from China. Every single wagon on that train had a container on it, and this chap looked at me with dismay a few minutes later when a goods train went in the opposite direction with not a single container on it. I said to him, I reassured him, don't worry, that's what we mean by invisible exports. But actually, and that is the key point, because a few minutes later, on the same platform, herds of commuters, including many from my constituency, boarded the train to Liverpool Street, not to go and make the widgets to go back to China, but to sell the insurance, to negotiate professional services, to do the finance. This is where our comparative advantage lies. Trade is about comparative advantage, doing what you do best. And if we leave, there is no way we can have a say in trying to complete the single market in services. If we stay, I believe we will achieve that, and you cannot put a value on what that will add to our economy with its expertise in the service sector. The third point, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about inward investment. I find it absolutely astonishing that we keep hearing from Brexit this point about the deficit in European trade compared to the rest of the world. There's only one group of companies that are doing all of that trade. And most of those, the ones making the biggest dent in exports, are foreign companies, Japanese car makers, American banks, French pharmaceutical firms like Sanofi, based in Haverhill, which I went to see recently. Their biggest export market is by far the United States of America. But they are based here in the United Kingdom because we have access to the single market. So to pretend that somehow European trade and the global trade is separate is a complete nonsense. If we vote to remain, I believe we will drive inward investment far higher and therefore drive our exports so that instead of worrying about trade figures as some negotiating stance, we look at them as we should, which is that we need to do better. And one way to do that is to vote to remain, to show this country is open again for business from around the world. The fourth point, Madam Deputy Speaker, relates to the point about the future of the Eurozone. those who want to leave say, oh, the glass is half empty. We should leave because the Eurozone will collapse and so on. I put it to you, Madam Deputy Speaker, because of this point about our flexible position. If the Eurozone gets into trouble, it will simply strengthen this unique fact that we alone, as a big country, have unfettered access and are not in the euro. If the Eurozone strengthens, that will massively boost our exports and help the trade deficit that we have. We cannot lose from the position that we are in, provided we play our cards right. And I would make one final fundamental point. There are those who say in this referendum, on neither basis are we voting for the status quo, and they are right. Because if we vote to remain, it will not be the status quo because we'll have made up our mind. And after all these years of being, I think, held back by this interminable debate about whether to be in or out, if we decide as a country to remain, we are deciding to get stuck in Europe, representing this country. And I believe that we will then have to stand tall, proud and prosperous in this great continent on behalf of this great country. And the only way to do that is to do the patriotic thing and vote to remain in the European Union.